This character means so much to me. It's a character that radiates, for me, identity and strength, charisma, and class. And I really want to do my best to serve this character and honor this character.
For this album, you made a short film that starred this man. Are there any cons to working with your partner?
Any cons? I think the only con is that I couldn't just take him down anywhere I want.
Stop scrolling, because the internet just crossed a line, and this time the rumor isn't just messy, it's explosive. According to online speculation, Teyana Taylor allegedly ended things with Pierre after whispers surfaced about a so-called secret relationship, a claim that has zero confirmation, but is still spread like wildfire. Let's be clear from the start. There is no verified evidence, no statements, no reporting, and no proof supporting this claim. What exists is gossip, and gossip of this nature carries real consequences. Yet despite that, the rumor has gained traction because it taps into shock value, secrecy, and long-standing internet habits of speculating about people's private lives. According to chatter on commentary pages, the story goes like this. Something about Pierre's personal life allegedly surfaced behind the scenes, and Teyana Taylor supposedly walked away once she learned about it. No dates, no receipts, no confirmation. Just anonymous posts and vague insinuations that refuse to name sources. And that's where things get uncomfortable, because unlike breakup rumors or dating speculation, assigning someone a secret sexual identity without consent or evidence isn't just gossip, it's projection. And the speed at which this rumor spread says more about the internet's appetite for scandal than about either person involved. What fueled this narrative wasn't proof, it was silence. When neither Teyana Taylor nor Pierre addressed the earlier breakup publicly, audiences began filling the gap with increasingly extreme explanations. The more ordinary reasons felt unsatisfying, the more sensational the theories became. And once people stop believing a story needs evidence, anything becomes possible. Some fans immediately pushed back, calling the rumor irresponsible and harmful. Others questioned why sexuality was being weaponized at all, as if it needed to explain the end of a relationship. And many pointed out the obvious. Even if someone were questioning or exploring privately, that wouldn't automatically explain a breakup, and it certainly wouldn't justify public speculation. Still, the rumor stuck, not because it made sense, but because it was shocking. And shock travels fast. What made this even more volatile is how it reframed Teyana Taylor's role in the narrative. Instead of being seen as someone who simply moved on, she was suddenly cast as someone reacting to exposure. That framing stripped her of agency and replaced it with drama she never confirmed. Meanwhile, Pierre became the center of a narrative that reduced his privacy to clickbait, without his consent, without facts, and without accountability. This is where the story stops being about celebrity relationships and starts being about boundaries. Because when rumors shift from who dated who to what someone is secretly hiding, the conversation turns invasive. And audiences are increasingly questioning whether the internet has gone too far chasing explanations it isn't entitled to. The real question isn't whether this rumor is true, it's why people were so ready to believe it. Why does the idea of a secret feel more satisfying than the possibility that two adults simply weren't compatible anymore? Why does silence invite scandal instead of respect? And why does speculation about identity still get treated like entertainment? Because according to what fans are starting to call out next, this rumor may say far more about internet culture than about Teyana Taylor or Pierre. And that realization is making people uncomfortable. The moment this rumor surfaced, it stood out, not because it sounded believable, but because of how far it reached into private territory. Claims that Teyana Taylor allegedly ended her relationship with Pierre due to a so-called secret relationship didn't come from reporting, insiders, or documentation. They came from anonymous commentary pages and loosely worded posts that offered shock without substance. That's the first red flag. There was no timeline, no named sources, No corroboration, just a dramatic explanation dropped into a vacuum of silence. And silence is exactly what made it spread. When Teyana Taylor and Aaron Pierre ended their relationship without public explanation, audiences were left with unanswered questions. At first, speculation stayed relatively surface level: timing, career alignment, lifestyle differences. But as weeks passed with no clarification, the theories escalated. The internet didn't just want an explanation, it wanted a provocative one. That's when this rumor entered the chat. What's important to understand is that this narrative didn't emerge because of new information. It emerged because ordinary explanations stopped satisfying people. The idea that two adults simply grew apart didn't feel dramatic enough. And once a story stops delivering emotional payoff, the internet looks for something louder. This is how speculation becomes invasive. The rumor reframed the breakup as a reaction to exposure, implying secrecy, betrayal, and shock, even though none of those elements were ever confirmed. That framing didn't just target Aaron Pierre's privacy. It also repositioned Teyana Taylor as someone reacting to scandal rather than acting with agency. That shift matters. Instead of being seen as a person making a personal decision, she was recast as someone responding to a revelation, a narrative that strips her of control and assigns her motives she never expressed. And that narrative gained traction precisely because it felt scandalous, not because it was supported. Another major red flag is how sexuality was used as a plot device. The rumor didn't come with concern, nuance, or respect. It came packaged as tea, as if speculation about identity were a twist in a storyline. That's why many viewers immediately pushed back, pointing out that even if someone were questioning or private about their personal life, that alone wouldn't explain a breakup, and certainly wouldn't justify public speculation. This is where a line was crossed. Unlike dating rumors or timeline debates, assigning someone a secret identity without consent turns curiosity into violation. And that's why many fans, including LGBTQ+ viewers, called the rumor irresponsible and harmful, not just to Aaron Pierre, but to anyone who's ever seen privacy weaponized for clicks. What fueled the rumor wasn't evidence. It was frustration with not knowing. The internet often treats silence as an invitation, but silence isn't an empty space, it's a boundary. And when that boundary isn't respected, speculation doesn't just fill the gap, it distorts reality. Another reason this rumor gained traction is because it offered finality. It gave people a reason that felt definitive. No more wondering why the relationship ended. No ambiguity, just a dramatic explanation that tied everything up neatly, even if it wasn't true. But neat stories aren't always honest ones. The fact that neither Teyana Taylor nor Aaron Pierre addressed this rumor at all actually weakened it, not strengthened it. In most celebrity scandals involving real exposure, there are reactions, corrections, or at least damage control. Here, there was nothing, no panic, no response, just continued distance. And that absence speaks louder than the rumor itself. Because if this claim held weight, it wouldn't be living only in anonymous captions and comment sections. It would have substance. It doesn't. What we're really seeing in this phase of the story is a shift from curiosity to entitlement, the belief that the public deserves explanations for private decisions. And when those explanations aren't given, the internet invents them. That doesn't make them true. It makes them revealing. Because this rumor says less about Teyana Taylor or Aaron Pierre, and far more about how quickly online spaces escalate from interest to intrusion when silence denies them a narrative. As the rumor gained traction, the conversation shifted from curiosity to concern. Not because people suddenly believed it, but because many realized how it was being used. Claims that Teyana Taylor ended her relationship due to a so-called secret aspect of Aaron Pierre's private life didn't just lack proof. They relied on insinuation as entertainment. And that's exactly why so many viewers began pushing back. First, let's talk about harm. Speculating about someone's sexuality or private identity, especially without consent or evidence, isn't neutral gossip. It frames identity as scandal, secrecy as wrongdoing, and privacy as deception. That framing doesn't just affect the people named, it reinforces the idea that personal identity is fair game for public judgment. Many LGBTQ+ commenters were quick to point this out, noting that rumors like this recycle stigma under the guise of tea. Second, the rumor's momentum didn't come from new information. It came from repetition. Anonymous posts cited other anonymous posts. Commentary pages paraphrased each other. Screenshots of captions replaced sourcing. Within hours, the claim felt widespread, not because it was verified, but because it was everywhere. This is how misinformation hardens. Frequency masquerades as credibility. Another accelerant was narrative convenience. The rumor offered a clean ending to a story people felt entitled to finish. Instead of ambiguity, it supplied shock. Instead of nuance, it supplied a twist. And twists travel faster than truths. But there's a third factor people often miss: projection. When a relationship ends quietly, audiences project explanations that align with their own fears or assumptions. In this case, silence invited the most extreme reading possible. Why? Because ordinary reasons, misalignment, timing, boundaries, didn't satisfy the appetite for drama. The rumor didn't spread because it made sense. It spread because it was sensational. That's also why the pushback grew louder as the rumor spread. Fans began asking basic questions that never got answers. Where did this come from? Who said this? Why is identity being weaponized? Why is Teyana Taylor being recast as reacting to exposure when she never indicated that? Those questions exposed the rumor's biggest weakness. It collapses under scrutiny. There's also a gendered and racial dimension to the harm. Teyana Taylor was repositioned as a character responding to scandal rather than a person making a choice. Pierre was reduced to a storyline that erased his agency entirely. Both were flattened to serve a narrative that prioritized shock over humanity. Importantly, no credible outlet picked this up. No journalists corroborated it. No insiders confirmed it. The rumor lived and died within the ecosystem of commentary pages, a sign that it lacked substance from the start. Silence from both parties became another point of debate, but not in the way rumor pushers expected. Instead of validating the claim, the silence underscored a boundary. When truly damaging revelations surface, public figures tend to address them, even briefly. Here, there was nothing. No damage control, no clarifications, just continued distance. That absence matters. It suggests there was nothing to correct, because nothing factual had been introduced. The rumor fed on the idea that silence equals guilt, but in reality, silence often equals refusal. Refusal to dignify speculation. Refusal to let invasive narratives set the terms of the conversation. Why does the pushback matter so much? Because this is the point where audiences decide whether gossip culture polices itself. Calling out harmful speculation isn't about protecting celebrities from scrutiny. It's about protecting basic standards of fairness. People can analyze timelines and public behavior without turning identity into a punchline. And many fans did exactly that, reframing the story back to what's actually observable. Two people ended a relationship privately and chose not to narrate it. Everything else is conjecture. The final takeaway from this phase is uncomfortable but necessary. Not every silence needs decoding. Sometimes the most responsible response is to stop filling gaps with the loudest possible theory. Because when speculation turns invasive, the cost isn't just accuracy, it's empathy. At this stage of the story, one thing becomes impossible to ignore. The rumor didn't spread because of evidence. It spread because of silence. When Teyana Taylor and Pierre chose not to explain their breakup publicly, that silence became a vacuum. And in internet culture, vacuums don't stay empty for long. They get filled with the loudest possible theory. Silence is uncomfortable for audiences because it denies closure. People want reasons. They want timelines. They want emotional resolution. When they don't get it, they start creating it. And the longer the silence lasts, the more extreme the theories become. Not because they're likely, but because they're memorable. This is how speculation escalates. At first, the theories were reasonable: career misalignment, timing, different life goals. But those explanations don't generate clicks. They don't spark debate. They don't go viral. So as the story stalled, the internet pushed it further, toward shock, secrecy, and scandal. That's when the rumor crossed into dangerous territory. Online culture rewards emotion, not accuracy. The more shocking a claim feels, the more engagement it generates. Likes, comments, shares, all spike when a story triggers outrage or disbelief. And once engagement becomes the metric, truth becomes optional. This is why rumors about private identity travel so fast. They're framed as revelations, as hidden truths, as secrets finally exposed. Even when there's no proof, the language alone makes people feel like they're witnessing something forbidden, and that feeling keeps them watching. But there's another layer to why silence fuels these theories: projection. Audiences project their own fears, biases, and unresolved questions onto public figures. Silence becomes a mirror. If someone believes secrecy must hide something, they'll see confirmation in every quiet moment. If someone expects drama, they'll invent it when it doesn't appear. In this case, the rumor didn't just speculate about Pierre's private life. It attempted to explain away the breakup in a way that felt dramatic enough to justify the lack of public reaction. It offered an answer that was final, sensational, and emotionally charged. That's why it stuck. But here's the irony: extreme rumors often signal the absence of real information. When facts are present, speculation narrows. When facts are absent, speculation explodes. The size of the rumor is proportional to the size of the information gap, not the truth. Another reason silence gets misread is because people confuse privacy with secrecy. Privacy is choosing not to share. Secrecy implies hiding wrongdoing. The internet often collapses the two. When celebrities don't narrate their lives, audiences assume there's something to uncover. That assumption is especially dangerous when it targets identity, because it frames personal boundaries as deception. This is why many fans began pushing back hard. They recognize the pattern. When a story doesn't give the internet what it wants, the internet manufactures a villain, a twist, or a revelation to keep itself entertained. And in doing so, it often crosses ethical lines without hesitation. What makes this even more revealing is that neither Teyana Taylor nor Pierre changed their behavior as the rumor spread. There was no panic, no correction, no attempt to control the narrative. That consistency suggests the rumor didn't disrupt anything real. It only disrupted online conversation. If the claim held weight, we would have seen ripples. Instead, we saw restraint. And restraint is boring online. Silence doesn't trend unless people turn it into a mystery. And once mystery enters the chat, shock becomes the currency. The most outrageous explanation wins attention, regardless of harm. That's the ecosystem this rumor thrived in. But the pushback signals something important. Audiences are becoming more aware of how this cycle works. More people are questioning why silence automatically invites intrusion. More people are asking whether they're entitled to explanations for private decisions. Because the truth is simple and unsatisfying. Sometimes relationships end quietly. Sometimes no one did anything wrong. Sometimes silence means nothing more than, "This isn't for you." The internet struggles with that reality because it removes the spectacle. It removes the dopamine. It removes the drama. And when drama disappears, shock gets manufactured to replace it. That's what happened here. This rumor isn't powerful because it's believable. It's powerful because it exposes how online culture handles ambiguity by turning it into something extreme. And that realization is forcing many viewers to reconsider not just this story, but how many others they've consumed the same way. By the time this rumor reached its loudest point, something unexpected happened. It started falling apart under its own weight. Not because of a dramatic denial or a viral correction, but because there was nothing solid holding it up. Claims that Teyana Taylor ended her relationship with Pierre due to a secret aspect of his private life couldn't survive even basic scrutiny. That collapse tells us more than the rumor ever did. First, there was no anchor, no reporting, no named source, no timeline, no corroboration from anyone with proximity to the situation. The story existed entirely within commentary loops, pages citing pages, captions echoing captions. Once viewers began asking simple questions like, "Who said this?" or "Where did this come from?" the answers disappeared. Second, the rumor contradicted observable behavior. Neither Teyana Taylor nor Pierre showed signs of damage control or crisis management. In celebrity culture, truly harmful revelations trigger visible responses: statements, legal moves, narrative corrections. Here, there was nothing, just continued privacy. That consistency strongly suggests there was nothing to address. Third, the rumor relied on a false premise: that identity speculation explains relationship endings. It doesn't. Even if people are exploring privately, which remains unverified here, relationships end for countless reasons that don't require scandal. The rumor's logic depended on treating identity as a plot twist, and once audiences recognized that framing as invasive, support evaporated. This is where boundaries come in. Silence was misread as an invitation. But silence is often a boundary, a decision not to perform private life for public consumption. When Teyana Taylor chose not to narrate her breakup, she wasn't hiding a truth. She was exercising control. When Pierre chose not to engage, he wasn't conceding guilt. He was refusing a premise he didn't consent to. The internet struggles with that kind of boundary because it denies content. What ultimately caused the rumor to collapse was ethical pushback. Viewers began naming the harm, weaponizing sexuality, turning identity into clickbait, and erasing consent. LGBTQ+ commenters were especially clear that speculation framed as scandal reinforces stigma, regardless of who it targets. That reframing shifted the conversation from, "Is this true?" to, "Should this be discussed at all?" And once the question becomes "should," virality loses momentum. Another key lesson is how quickly narratives can strip people of agency. The rumor recast Teyana Taylor as reacting to exposure instead of making a choice. It recast Pierre as a storyline rather than a person. Both reductions served engagement, not accuracy. When audiences recognized that, interest waned. There's also a broader takeaway about how closure works. Audiences wanted a reason that felt definitive because ambiguity is uncomfortable. The rumor offered certainty, even if false, but certainty built on intrusion doesn't last. Once people realized the certainty came at the cost of boundaries, it stopped feeling satisfying. What replaced it was something quieter: acceptance that not every ending is public. This moment exposes a pattern worth remembering. When information is scarce, the internet doesn't default to restraint. It defaults to spectacle. And the more private the subject, the more spectacular the theory becomes. That's not curiosity. It's entitlement dressed up as analysis. The collapse of this rumor is a reminder that not knowing is allowed. Allowed for the public. Allowed for fans. Allowed even when curiosity is intense. Silence doesn't need decoding. It needs respect. In the end, the strongest evidence against the rumor wasn't a denial. It was the lack of disruption in real life. No fallout, no behavioral shift, no narrative correction. Just two people continuing forward without explanation. That's not a scandal. That's a boundary holding. And the lesson here isn't about one couple. It's about how easily online culture confuses access with entitlement, and how quickly that confusion can turn invasive when a story refuses to perform. If there's one thing this episode should change, it's this. Not every silence hides a secret. Not every ending needs a twist. And not every private decision belongs to the internet. By the time this rumor fully collapsed, something more important was left behind. A mirror. Not for Teyana Taylor, not for Aaron Pierre, but for the audience that amplified it, questioned it, defended it, and ultimately decided whether it lived or died. Because this story didn't survive on facts, it survived on participation. Every click, every comment, every what if pushed it forward. And when viewers finally stepped back and asked why they were engaging, the momentum broke. That's not coincidence. That's accountability, even if it came late. One of the clearest lessons here is that the internet doesn't just react to stories. It builds them. Algorithms don't invent narratives. People do. Platforms reward attention, not accuracy. The more emotionally charged a claim feels, the more it spreads, regardless of who gets hurt along the way. This rumor didn't rise because it was convincing. It rose because it was provocative. And provocation thrives when audiences confuse curiosity with entitlement. Wanting to know isn't wrong. Believing you deserve to know is where the line gets crossed. Your private lives don't become public property just because someone is famous, and silence doesn't revoke that right. What changed the trajectory here was a shift in audience behavior. Viewers began questioning sources. They stopped repeating claims without receipts. They called out how speculation about identity was being used as a shortcut to drama. That collective pause drained the rumor of oxygen. That's power most people don't realize they have. Another uncomfortable truth surfaced too. Shock-based storytelling often disguises itself as exposure. Language like leaked, secret, revealed gives rumors the aesthetic of journalism without the substance. Once audiences recognized that no investigation existed, only amplification, credibility collapsed. And when credibility collapses, attention follows. So there's also an ethical layer that can't be ignored. Speculating about someone's identity without consent doesn't just target the individual, it reinforces harmful norms. It teaches audiences that privacy is suspicious and that silence must be interrogated. That mindset doesn't stay confined to celebrities. It trickles down into everyday interactions, where boundaries get questioned and personal choices get scrutinized. This is why so many people ultimately disengaged. Not because they suddenly stopped caring, but because they recognized the cost of caring that way. What happens next is the most important part. After a rumor fades, there's a temptation to move on without reflection, to treat it as just internet stuff. But moments like this shape culture. They define what behavior gets normalized and what lines get redrawn. So every time audiences choose restraint over reaction, they reset expectations. And that reset matters. For Teyana Taylor, moving forward without explanation was a statement. Privacy doesn't require permission. For Aaron Pierre, not engaging was a boundary. Narratives don't need validation to exist, or to be ignored. For the audience, the takeaway is bigger than any single headline. It's this: engagement is endorsement, not morally, but mechanically. Algorithms can't tell the difference between outrage and support. They only measure attention. When viewers learn to disengage from stories that violate boundaries, those stories lose power faster than any denial could achieve. This doesn't mean ignoring everything. It means choosing discernment over dopamine. The internet will always push extremes. It will always prefer the shocking explanation to the boring one. But boring is often where truth lives. Quiet endings, unexplained shifts, people choosing not to perform their pain. That's not failure of storytelling. That's real life refusing to be packaged. In the end, this rumor didn't end because someone proved it wrong. It ended because enough people stopped finding it acceptable. And that shift, subtle but decisive, is what actually matters. Because the next story will come. The next silence will be misread. The next rumor will try to fill the gap. What changes is whether audiences participate the same way. And that's the real cliffhanger. Now I want to hear from you. Do you think the internet crossed a line with this rumor? Or do public figures automatically give up privacy once they stop explaining themselves? Was the silence from Teyana Taylor and Aaron Pierre a smart boundary? Or did it leave too much space for narratives to spiral? Drop your honest thoughts in the comments. Keep it respectful, keep it real. If you watch this whole breakdown, Hit like so the algorithm knows you want context, not just chaos. Make sure you subscribe and turn on notifications, because the loudest stories aren't always the most important ones. And the next one is already forming. Remember this: not every silence hides a secret. Sometimes it's just the end of the conversation,